Hey everyone, I'm just going to show you real quick on a nice and easy fix for if you're on a domain and there's users that tend to connect to the wireless and you need them to connect to the wired or the network instead. Some of the issues that we ran into was some people would try to access specific websites that are only available on the domain, and they always would come to us about unable to access websites. We've also had some similar issues with just accessing specific programs on the network. So this quick fix actually helps eliminate those that tend to want to connect to the wireless instead of being on the wired connection. So in order to do this, we actually set up a group policy. As you can see, I set up a group policy for scripts under the login properties. I've had successful attempts only under the login properties. The startup scripts tend to not work correctly, so put it under login properties. So once you're in there, first you want to create a batch file. So what I do is I actually create a batch file that will run, that will basically create a new task for the task scheduler using a specific XML file. And this XML file is located on a network folder under a specific area, which I call the test user, subfolder called scripts, and then another subfolder called disconnect wireless, and then the actual XML file is the disabled wireless XML file. Then it will basically give it a name, and it will be called disable wireless on the user's scheduled tasks. So one thing I ran into was that the wireless connection event that is shown in an event viewer on the computer is actually not available in the group policy. So what I did is actually, and this is why I went with an XML file, so I created the event, or I created the task, scheduled task, on one of my client computers, and then I exported it as an XML. That XML holds the event logs needed that group policy doesn't contain, so that all I do is run this disable wireless command batch script, which will basically create the scheduled task using that XML file. So with that being said, once you have the batch script done, go ahead and save it to a location. What I did is actually save it into the specific group policy sysvol folder on the domain controller, and then make sure it's selected as a batch file. Another thing to check is make sure that if you go into show files, that the batch script is actually listed in here. I've ran into other issues where if you just add it through here, it doesn't actually add it in the login folders. It actually creates its own sub sysvol folder. So just make sure it's in the default login folders with all the other scripts you have, and then make sure it's listed here, and then that's it. Make sure it shows up on the client computers, and then it should run through. And when you dock the computer or plug in a wired cable, the script, or the task actually at this time, since it's installed already on the computer, will see that there's an event raise on the computer, and when that sees the event, it will run the disabled wireless command, which is basically disconnect the LAN and then disconnect the wireless, and then proceed with using the LAN connection. So on that client computer, I have my scheduled task created. So when the group policy runs, it basically creates this disable wireless, which is the task I called it, and I left the general tab default, and then for my triggers, this is the event I was talking about. So basically it will look for every time the user plugs in a wired connection, it will look under the system log file and the event viewer, and it will point to the E1DExpress source code, and then if there's an event numbered 33, which E1DExpress source and 33 event ID is related to any new connections that are wired, being connected to through the Ethernet port. So when the computer sees this event, the task will run and initiate. And when that happens, I have 3 action items, and technically you only need 1 if if your company doesn't use a VPN. For us, we do use a VPN, so basically these 2 will execute and kill the processes for our VPN client, and then it'll also disconnect the wireless connection using the command prompt line netsh, and then specifying the wireless LAN connection, and then just a command called disconnect to disconnect the connection. And everything else is left default.